Let us take a moment of silence. O Lord, may the meditations of our hearts and the words of my mouth be acceptable in thy sight, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. The miraculous, mysterious power of praying for others to be healed. I couldn't think of a way to make that shorter. I tried to make it shorter. But I want to focus on the miraculous and also the mysterious power of this thing we do called prayer. Praying for others. There are several types of prayer. The Catholic Church has outlined them beautifully. And the kind of prayer we're looking at today is what we would call intercessory prayer, which means praying in place of someone else, praying for someone else. And so that's what we're going to look at today. And as you can imagine, prayer has been a big effort of mine because I felt so gifted by all of your prayers, lying there in that hospital bed for 18 days. I mean, who gets kept in a hospital bed for 18 days these days? And yet it really immersed me. It was kind of like this little cocoon that I decided, well, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to make the best of it. So when the nurses would come in, I'd start speaking in a Cockney accent, and I'd start talking like this. Are you going to give me a shot again in the abdomen? And we'd start talking, and she'd talk back to me in Indian or Irish or Scottish, and pretty soon we were laughing and just having a ball. And so I just decided to make it all theater, make it all improv. I mean, all I could do was lie there. I couldn't even go to the bathroom myself. That's pretty humbling for a pastor. You have to depend on other people for everything. And yet, what it did was allow me to just be totally receptive like a baby. And that's when the prayer can get in, because when I'm running around all the places, and I really thought I'd slowed down before this illness. I really thought I'd gotten slower. But, I got, I guess, as close to slow as stop that you could get in that hospital bed. And I said, oh, I could slow down this much and pay this much attention and maybe hear this much in between the lines, or see that fleeting sadness on the face of the woman who was coming to take my food tray away, and ask her, hey, what's going on? So it really heightened my sensitivity, but especially to prayer. To prayer now, when I think of this, there are two images I love. One is when my dad had open heart surgery, had, I think it was a quadruple bypass, and he said that he would sit by his window as he would recover, and he would see all these little birds flying in to deliver a prayer to him. And they would leave it on the windowsill, and then they would leave. And he just felt so comforted by that. I love that image. And then the other one I had, my last time through chemo and surgery and all, was I was picturing myself in a meditation. I was trying to take a reading of where I was, and I felt that I was stranded on a raft way out in the ocean, and I was all alone, and nobody thought about me, nobody cared about me, God had forgotten me. I was really in a bad place. And then all of a sudden, I heard these little laps of water coming against the raft, against the wood. And each little lap was a prayer. And pretty soon, my raft started going up and down. And the prayer kept nurturing me and going, lifting me up. And it just broke through my denial of that I'm separate when we're all together. And here was that energy coming of prayer. So I just want us to look this morning really briefly about about us and offering ourselves. Now, there's three types of the people who are looking at people suffering. Basically three types. I know I'm simplifying here. Okay, so the first type are the type, I'm gonna get some water. A little water. Oh, thank you. I got it.
I'm on it, you don't have to stop.
The first type are the type that don't care about the suffering, and worse than that, they make fun of the suffering, or they make profits off the suffering. And so that's what we have an example of in this story that Carolyn read about the man who was the leader of the synagogue, the Jairus, and he had come with his wife to beg Jesus, please come heal our daughter, she's dying. And these people scoffed. They scoffed. They said, don't bother him. She's dead already. And don't pay any attention, Rabbi, speaking to Jesus. Don't pay any attention. Not only that, there were professional mourners in those days. They still have them in the Middle East. Professional mourners. And I'm not saying it's a totally bad thing to have people come that you pay. Because we have caterers come, right, to cook for us. And we have other people come to take care of our needs, and we pay them for it. But the story that shocks me is the organizations, the companies who are counting the lives of young black boys in school in 6th grade and figuring out how many of them are going to end in the cradle to prison pipeline, and already putting out bids to build detention centers and jails for them. And they are making money off of our children, our dying children. And so that's not okay. I would say that Jesus would say that's not okay to be a naysayer, to be someone who cheers the death of our children. It is important not to be a naysayer. Now, even it could be not as bad as that. If you remember the story of Bartimaeus, Bartimaeus was blind, and he was sitting by the side of the road, always begging. That's what he did. If you're a beggar, if you're blind, that's what you did back in those days. And his friends tell him, Jesus is coming. He gets really excited. He's heard about Jesus. Never seen him, of course, right? He's heard about him, and so he starts yelling out to him, Jesus, come here. And his friends say to him, you better shut up. Don't call him, don't bother him. So here are these friends, you think if they're being helpful, and then they turn and they just tell him, don't call out. But he does call out. And this is the funny thing, it's just like us human beings, all of us. Because as soon as Jesus says, hey, son of Timaeus, Bartimaeus, what do you want? He says, I want to be healed. I want to see. And so then what do his friends do? Bartimaeus, get up, he wants to see you. So for 1 minute they're going, shut up, be quiet, Bartimaeus. The next minute they're going, hey, get up, he does want to see you. So that's like a lot of us. But at least they're not being neutral, nothing. Because the Lord says back in the Hebrew Scriptures, he says, if you are lukewarm, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. Spit you out of my mouth. It's better to be angry. It's better to be kind. It's better to be something than nothing, than neutral, than just nothing. And so we don't want to be neutral. But the third and the best way, and of course you know what this is to be someone who prays for that person who's suffering, who is active for that person who's suffering, who is asking, probably sometimes night and day, if someone you love is in a lot of trouble, whatever way, physical, spiritual, mental, praying 24/7. Please, God, help that person. Heal that person. Please. That we have the story of the centurion. Centurion means this man was very powerful in the army in Israel and Palestine back then. He had 100 men under him. And his slave is dying. And here we have a centurion who's Roman, who's wealthy, who's got power, and who's going up to Jesus, who's not Roman, he's a Jew. And Romans were occupying the Jews. And he says, will you help heal my slave? And Jesus says, well, Jesus had no barriers to who he was going to heal. So he says, okay, I'll go with you. Take me to your home. I'll heal your slave. And the centurion says, no, you don't need to come. I don't want to bother you like that. Listen, I'm a man of power. And when I give an order to my soldiers, they go do it. And when I give an order to my slaves, they obey me. So you just give the word. He's healed. And he'll be healed. And Jesus just looks at him and says, such faith I have not seen in all of Israel. Wow. So that story happens just before this one, when this story is mixed in with another healing story, because you know what Jesus is about, my friends? Healing, yes. As much as it's mysterious and we don't understand it, why some of us pray and get better, some of us pray and we don't get better, our loved ones don't get better, I don't understand it. I've had a lot of arguments with God, and I hope you do too. It's one thing the Jewish community has taught me, of all my friends and family here and my family in Chicago. It's argue with God. Don't give in to the first plan. If you don't like it, at least let God know. You don't like it, and you want something else. Now, of course, I have to say I've been humbled enough that I end up by saying, but thy will be done, oh God, because you really know better than I do, believe it or not, what is best for this person. So it's really important at the end of all our prayers and our fighting with God to say, I surrender, your desire be done for this person, right? Yes. So we have this wonderful story of these parents who are there just aching for their 12-year-old daughter. And what's interesting in the version of these, there's 3 gospels that tell this story. Jesus in one of them says to the naysayers, get out of the house. You are not going to be here while I work my healing. Why is that?
They were naysaying.
They were naysaying. Their energy was not supportive of the healing energy he was bringing in. And so, my friends, let's get braver. If we're praying and somebody starts to say to us, why are you doing that? That's wasteless, that's stupid, it's a waste of your energy. You just say, thank you very much, go have some tea and sit down in that corner over there. Because I don't want you to be having that kind of feeling while we are doing some healing prayer here. Because I'm sure I don't have to remind you that we just don't know what the end result is going to be. Are there any guarantees? No. There are no guarantees that it will turn out the way we want or the way the person wants. And yet we got to do it anyway. And I'll close with this as soon as I just say that I love this story about the little girl, because when Jesus goes in, and I imagine he grabs the hands of the father and the mother and the 3 disciples, and they're all there around her bed. And she wakes up, her spirit comes back into her. And then Jesus says, beautiful thing, give her some food. She's been dead, for God's sake. She must be hungry. So I love that line, because he's caring always about the healing and the feeding of the children. And now I'm going to close with this, and that is the role of hope in our efforts to pray for those that we love. Our hope could not, our prayers could not happen if we did not have hope. There's an old Jewish saying that says, every creature is created perfect except man, except the human being. And because the human being isn't created perfect, God gave us hope. Because with hope, we can look for something better, right? We can hope for something better. With hope, we can have life. Without hope, we're dying. And so it's crucial to have hope. And if someone else, if you've lost your hope, then go to someone who's still got hope. There's nothing wrong with going and saying, my candle's dying here. I've done it many times now on my own. I can't do this anymore. Do you know, a PhD, this is the most humbling thing, I think, in the hospital. A PhD I worked for 7 years to get, and I was signing my signature with my left hand and X on the forms in the hospital. And I couldn't conceive that would be my life from now on. And it wasn't the end of the story. It was then, but it's not now. I can write with my right hand, praise God. But that's just to say, I lost hope a lot. And whether I cried to a nurse or a dietitian or just said, help me, I've lost hope, but maybe you have some. And that's where your prayers would come floating in or fluttering in. Your little wavelets would keep my raft going. And your gifts of prayer and love were just amazing. So I want to end by this beautiful, I know I've ended 3 times. I haven't been up here in 6 weeks, so you gotta forgive me. I'll close with this. My sister Erica, 13 years younger than me. No, 13 months younger than me. It's a chemo brain. She was crying when I was first in the hospital, had my emergency surgery, and they saved my arm. And she was crying all night and praying to God and Jesus. She's so close to Jesus. And she was despairing and not knowing what would happen to her older sister. And then in the middle of the night, she woke up and she had a vision. She wasn't asleep. She said it was not a dream, it was a vision. And in it, she saw, like with a X-ray vision. X-ray vision, she saw inside my arm, right here, where the cancer had eaten the bone almost all the way through. She saw inside my arm to the bones and the sinew and the muscle and the blood, flesh, everything. And she looked and she saw bees, hundreds of honeybees. And the honeybees were coming and they were making honey within the hive, which was the bone of my arm. And if you want to go look, the structure of the bone, my friends, is the structure of a hive. And the bees were making honey, that sweet, sweet essence in my bone. And then as she's looking at this, and it's bright and glorious, and she can't believe it, she feels herself going into bliss. And then she hears humming, and the bees are humming. And you know what I thought about it? We don't hum when we're sad. We don't hum when we're mad. We only hum when we're full of joy or happiness. Right? Right? Yeah. And so here are these bees doing their little healing work in my arm, making honey out of the brokenness. That's the amazing gift that Erica got for me, which I've been using for my meditations for weeks now. And I invite you to use for someone that you might like to bless with the ancient power of the honeybees. And so, my friends, this is the power of prayer for healing for others, that we can all practice more and more and be blessed by it. Give hope a chance. Give prayer a chance. Amen.
Amen. All right, let's continue with our prayer time.